Hey everyone, we are live. It is time to kick it in gear. My name's Kevin Griffin. I'm the owner of SwiftKick. We're a software training and consulting company based out of Southeast Virginia. And I am joined today by Jenna Charlton. How are you?
Hi, everybody. I'm good. I'm good. How are
Good.
you?
Good. Well, we just opened up the room, so we're going to give people a moment to get in and get them make themselves comfortable. If you're already with us, take a moment to go into the chat on the right side of your screen and tell us where you're watching us from today. Or just sit there. That's fine. I mean, it's like, worst case scenario, everyone's just quiet. We do have people in the room, so someone should say hi.
That's a positive.
Oh. All right, Ned from Wilmington. I know Ned personally. Ned's a
Oh,
great guy. Um, Kenneth from Norfolk is over my backyard.
I'm actually headed to North Carolina right before Christmas.
What part of North Carolina?
Charlotte.
Charlotte. I love
Yeah.
Charlotte.
No,
It's
Charlotte's
a
great.
gray little down. It's like the nice downtown where you don't have to drive anywhere. You park once, walk. I love it.
My dad lives in South Park, like the South Park
Okay.
neighborhood, so that's kind of like my second home.
All right. And we have Nicole from Minneapolis. So, Nicole, do you have any snow? It sounds like a cold area of the country. Charlotte has no beach, but Charlotte's got other stuff.
It's
Not,
true.
I don't know what. You don't need a beach. Charlotte has a major airport hub for American Airlines. I mean, I go through Charlotte all the time strictly because of that. All right. Well, let's go ahead and we'll kick it off. This is being recorded to YouTube as well. So if you're watching us on YouTube after the fact, thank you for watching. Sorry you can't ask any questions live or participate in our chat. But if you go to swiftkick.in, you can register for our next SwiftKick show, and you can participate in the chat. And that's what makes this a lot of fun. Is not so much listening to all the great information we get from our presenters, but being able to converse back and forth with them one on one. But let's go through a little bit of Q&A. Let's learn more about Jenna because I've had the opportunity to meet Jenna in real life. She spoke at Revolution Conf, one of the conferences I run in beautiful Virginia Beach, Virginia. So right on the beach, literally right on the beach. And I think I asked a couple months ago the folks who spoke at Revolution Conf, "Hey, who wants to come do the Swift Kick show?" And Jenna was very happy to oblige. But Jenna, tell us a little bit about yourself. Just who do you work for and what do you do?
So I work for Progressive Insurance here in Cleveland, Ohio, and we do have snow. Um, we got a lot yesterday.
Oh my gosh.
Um, and I am a tester. So my primary job right now is testing a replacement application that we're building for our agencies. So if you were to go and get a quote from a progressive agent in their office, this would be the application they would quote on. And I'm actually transitioning to a new team that's going to work with some internal stuff regarding some OAuth login.
Awesome. I remember when I was a junior developer going into different places, and they would always ask me testing questions. And it's like I the one that always stuck in my mind is like, how would you test a vending machine? And I'm like, I don't know. It's like, am I writing vending machine software? I don't understand the question enough to answer it. But I'm sure there's a bunch of weird ways you can answer
There
that
are more tests than you expect.
question. That's a just good life lesson right there. It's more than you expect. Oh, I always like to ask our guests to tell us a little bit about your origin story. So we know where you are now, but let's go back to a much younger Jenna who got this bug for testing or software development or just being in technology. How did that happen?
So, like a lot of testers, I fell into testing. The funny thing is that I remember being a very small child and saying, "Mom, I want to work with computers in some way when I'm an adult." And I remember everyone telling me, because I am terrible at math, you're never going to be able to do that. Like, don't just think of something else to do with your life. So I went off and I started working on a theater degree, which I bailed on. Um, and then I floated around. And I got a great job with a company called Brand Muscle in their help desk. And they let me make the transition to testing. And that was only about 8 years ago. And now I'm in love. I realized it's all I want to do for the rest of my life.
Fantastic. I love hearing that because I know a lot of testers who just say, I don't enjoy what I'm working on. I'm trying to move out of testing. It's good to hear someone who really appreciates and loves testing. And also working with good testers are far and few in between. I've worked with some really bad testers in the
Oh.
past. Um, so outside of tech, outside of your day job, do you have any unique or special hobbies or interests?
So I do. So I have some hobbies that are weirder than others. I am a big fan of pro wrestling. My husband and I travel to go to pro wrestling shows and see shows. And the talk that I did at Revolution Conference was all about how pro wrestling made me a better tester. Um, I also have some less weird hobbies, like I'm a deacon at my church, which isn't quite a hobby as much as a calling.
Yeah,
Um, so yeah, those are the primary things that take up my life.
I think that's fantastic. Jenna, you and I were talking earlier, and I got confused on your Revolution Conf talk, just the number of talks and speakers we have, and I remember specifically your talk came up in the discussions when we were selecting sessions. It's like, oh, she's a pro wrestler that that, that moved to testing. It's like this would be a great talk. So we misread the session. I mean, it's not a bad thing. It was a great session. It was well received, and but now I had in the back of my head this entire time. It's like, well, Jenna's a pro wrestler. It's like you watch what you say to her. She's gonna put a chair to your back or something. So
Just for the record, everybody who can't see me, I am entirely too small to be a wrestler. I am shorter than Sasha Banks. I'm shorter than Alexa Bliss, and I'm a wimp.
So, all right. Well, now I know.
Yeah.
And so, if you submit for Revolution Conf this next year, I now have to hold that against you that you're not a pro wrestler. But so that's all right, though. I think you still have an in. Well, all right, Jenna. So last question I'll ask, and then we'll let you take things over from here. Is there's a lot of technology out there, and there's new stuff coming up every single day. Is there anything out there tech wise that's really exciting you, whether you're working with it or not?
So there's two things right now. I'm really interested in the way we can use AI for testing in the future. It's really important to note for all of my fellow testers, if you happen to be listening, AI will never replace testers, but AI can help us do our jobs better and help us reduce the manual labor. So I'm really interested in how AI is going to change testing. It's kind of a passion of mine working with accessibility. And I'm really involved in kind of socializing accessibility as a primary part of testing to the testing community as a whole.
That's awesome. I never really thought about AI in terms of testing, but that makes a lot of sense now that I'm kind of churning on the idea. Um, yeah, really interesting. So you'll have to come back in a year or two and do a session for us on AI in terms of testing. And excellent. Well, for folks who are watching in the live show, if you have any questions at all during Jenna's presentation, please just leave a note in the chat where there are opportunities. I'll interrupt and I'll ask your question on your behalf. If not, at the very end of the session, fair game. Ask as many questions as you want to. And with that, Jenna, I will go ahead and hand it over to you and let you take it from here.
All right, well, let me go ahead and get my screen share set up here. And I apologize for the Windows forever. So what I'm here to talk to you guys about today is this idea of tools for navigating toxic teams. Um, And I want you to keep in mind that while toxicity is a problem in teams, it's something that can be solved. And that I never want people to look at their peers as toxic. Situations are toxic. People aren't. I mean, they can be, but in this situation, they aren't. So a little bit about me that you've already heard. I've been a tester for about 8 years. Don't pay attention to my bio. I keep shortchanging myself. As I mentioned, I'm a deacon at South Euclid United Church of Christ. I'm a big pro wrestling fan. I'm a cat mom and the wife of a cat dad. And I'm an empath. And that matters because I like feelings. I talk a lot about feelings. This is all about feelings. So if you don't like feelings, I apologize. Also, if you want to connect with me, I'm on Twitter. It's She Wrestles Test. Kind of fits me. So let's talk about what creates toxic teams. At the heart of toxic teams is conflict. And this is really the original root for most toxic teams. The root may have been long forgotten. The toxicity, whatever created it, the situation is probably long over enough that it could have been 5 years past. But what it leaves are all those bad feelings, and that passes down through the generations and the teams. Now, it is possible to have a bad culture fit, someone that comes and joins you that just doesn't work and doesn't click, and they bring with that bad fit a lot of conflict. And that's kind of a whole different talk. But in this situation, we're going to talk about the lingering bad feelings. Keeping in mind that toxicity lingers, just to hit that last bullet point again, let's say that a team was built 5 years ago, and that team had a lot of struggles. And there's 1 or 2 people left over from that original team. So maybe it was 10 people, there's 2 people that are still on it, and new people keep coming in. And as those new people come in, those bad feelings get passed from those original 2 people that are still there down the line. So you don't know why everybody has bad feelings about what they're doing and why everybody has bad feelings about the project or the task or the team, but they're still there. You just can't get rid of them. That's still conflict, even when it doesn't feel like it. So what do we do about these bad feelings, about this lingering conflict, this lingering resentment and toxicity? Well, one of the first things we have to look at is ways to navigate these conflicting personalities. We all have to accept that no one is going to get along with everyone. I want to be everybody's best friend. It is not going to happen. So I've accepted that there are going to be people in this world that I will not get along with. And it's pretty likely that at some point I'm going to work with one of them. And while personality conflicts are inevitable, you're not going to get along with everyone, they can be managed. Being really transparent, I'm going to share a couple of stories throughout our time together today. And the first one is about where I failed at this navigating conflicting personalities. This happened pretty recently. I have a peer who, unfortunately, this peer and I started out on a bad foot. Over 2 years ago, we just didn't connect. And that bad feeling has stayed. Unfortunately, I was in a retrospective and they were also there. I was on the phone. This person was there in person. And I'd been traveling. I wasn't feeling well. I was overtired. I was not at my best. It's not an excuse, but it's a reason. We were talking about some concerns and I raised one. And this other person, even though I didn't call them out by name, felt as though this was a personal attack. And they immediately jumped to defend themselves. And unfortunately, not being at my best and not remembering the guidelines for navigating conflicting personalities, I snapped back. I was aggressive. My tone wasn't kind. In fact, it was downright rude. I didn't swear. I didn't break the rules of a retro, but I certainly wasn't the person that I wanted to be. Unfortunately, I haven't done the right thing since because I've been able to see this person. I don't know where they are, but they haven't been in the office. What I need to do is to go to them and be accountable and say, hey, I wasn't at my best. I didn't do the right thing today. I need to apologize to you. That will help to bridge that conflict, but it's not going to fix it. Part of what will fix it is this idea of radical acceptance. Radical acceptance is something that you learn in dialectical behavior therapy. This is a really good tool for and skill for people who have anxiety, maybe have some issues with depression. Um, and it's this idea that, well, I can't change anyone or anything. I can accept those things. Um, and it's important to keep in mind that acceptance doesn't equal approval. Saying I accept this situation doesn't mean you approve of the situation. So that's something to keep in mind. You don't have to feel like this person that you don't get along with, that you're having conflict with, that you approve of them, but you can accept them. And it changes your life when you start to look at things this way, when you say, I radically accept this situation that I have no control over. And to point out accountability again, like I pointed out, that I have not had the chance to apologize, which would keep me accountable. Recognizing that you're accountable to each other and to yourself, to the team as a whole. And if you're like me and you work for a company, to the business is really important. And accountability is going to kind of be a running theme through our conversation today. But being accountable helps keep you honest, and will help you bridge a lot of these gaps. Bear with me for just a moment. So the next thing I want to talk about is this idea of creating common ground across disciplines. Now, you want to build common ground for everyone, but a lot of times there's conflict between the different disciplines within your team. The first thing I want to touch on is that team building works. I know people think it's corny and say, team building activities are lame. I don't want to spend the time. I have work to do. Do it anyway. Team building can be things as small as just having little potlucks and doing fantasy football and pointing out good things that people did in daily stand-ups. But it can also be big things like going and doing activities together, whatever it takes to help people get to know each other. Because before you can be a team, you have to know the people around you. After you start to build your team, you want to start really creating community. Community really matters in teams. And the reason it matters is because we spend more time together with our work group than we do with our families. I spend at least 40 hours a week with my peers, maybe more like 32 because I work from home one day a week. But still, I spend a significant amount of time with these people. It's important that I trust them, that I feel safe with them, and that they trust me and feel safe with me. The way you create community in your team is going to depend on your team. Every team's different. Every team has different needs. Everyone is more comfortable, has different comfort levels with feelings. I'm very comfortable with feelings. I like them a lot. But I have peers that aren't comfortable with feelings. So you have to take that into account. But I want to share another story with you about why community matters. And this is kind of an extreme case, but it can happen in less extreme situations. When I joined this team, it was in its very beginning, and it'll last for another couple of years. One of my peers, and his name is Tim, shared with us that he had been diagnosed with cancer. Fortunately, because so many people knew each other really well from past projects, a community had already started to build. The community that rallied around him was our 100-something person project. I think there were 110 people at that point. And it was great because we were able to support him, and it was across 2 states. He was in Colorado. We were in Cleveland. We found ways using the community that was around him in Colorado to support him by sending meals to his family and making sure he had things to do in the hospital when he was undergoing chemo. And we were able to make him feel safe enough to share his journey as he went through chemo. And he shared with us how he was feeling about things and his fears and where he was through treatment. And unfortunately, he didn't make it. He passed away a little over a month ago. But that community that surrounded him then chose to surround his family. And we've been able to support them as they've dealt with his transition. And yes, this is an extreme case of community coming together and supporting people. But smaller situations like this are going to happen all the time in your team. Someone's going to lose a friend or a parent or, heaven forbid, a child. People suffer mental health crises. They deal with depression and anxiety. They see you more than they see anyone else. So your community of your team should be able to surround them and help them feel safe when they're at work, and maybe even when they're not at work. Um, I know this seems touchy-feely, but it's really what I believe in. To something that's a little less heavy, I want to say to all the testers, if you happen to be listening, developers are not the enemy. It's really important to keep that in mind as you're creating common ground across disciplines. Developers are there to help do the work that you're going to test. They're not there to make you feel bad. They're not there to punish you. Um, and even when they're being difficult and arguing over defects, they're doing it because they really believe that they're doing the right thing. In the same respect, all of the developers out there, testers are not out to get you. We are here to be accountable to the work that we need to test. We're here to be accountable to make sure that quality is happening, and we're here to influence a culture of quality. We don't own quality. The whole team owns quality, but we're certainly there to help influence it and to test and to challenge you. Developers will push back on us, and we should be pushing back on the developers to making sure that everyone is doing the best work possible. So instead of looking at defects as an attack, or instead of looking at a pushback from a developer as an attack, start looking at it as an opportunity to create common ground and build together based on learning from one another and having open and honest communication. Something else to keep in mind with this creating common ground across disciplines is that everybody on your team is technical. I hate hearing that I'm not technical. I'm a business analyst, so I'm not technical. I'm a tester, so I'm not technical. Technical does not equal code. Everyone's skill set is technical in a different way. I guarantee you, if I sat down a developer and said, here's this story card I'm working on, test it, they wouldn't know the ins and outs of the technical art of testing, be it manual or automation. Just like if a developer sat me down and said, here's the story card I'm working on, code it, I would probably cry. But I wouldn't be able to do it. And I respect their technical skills enough to know that, just as they should respect mine. And this goes to business and project managers too. Your business folks, business analysts, there is a technical skill set that goes along with business analyst work. It's not something that you can just wake up in the morning and decide to do. They have a technical skill set. It may not involve writing code. It may not involve testing, but it's still technical within their discipline. And project managers as well. I actually tried to take a project management class at work. It was the PMP class. And I quit after just a couple of weeks. I said, you know what? I'm never going to be a project manager. This is way too math oriented. And it really is technical in its own unique way. And we need to respect that from one another and respect that in each other's skill sets. And the last thing in creating common ground across disciplines, accountability again. We are accountable to each other. We're accountable to our team, to our community, and to the business as a whole. And keeping accountability in mind helps to create that common ground. So we've talked about conflict. We've talked about conflicting personalities. We've talked about building relationships across disciplines. Now let's talk about how we deal with broken relationships. This is what I need to do to heal the broken relationship that I mentioned earlier. First thing is be kind. Even when you don't want to be kind, even when it hurts to be kind, even when doing it sucks, be kind. Speaking to other people with kindness, reaching out to other people from a place of kindness, approaching the work from a place of kindness, being kind when you write defects, being kind when you put in your comments and code, all helps to influence a culture of kindness within your team. I know it sounds cliche and everybody says, be the change you want to be in the world, but it's true. Be the change on your team, even when you don't want to, even when it hurts, even when doing it sucks. If you see that people aren't speaking to each other in a way that you approve of or you feel comfortable with or you feel it's unkind, be the change. Be the one who steps out and says, that was really unkind. We need to do better. Be the one who points out in retrospectives, I saw a lot of unkindness in stand-ups this week. I think we need to make a change on that. And model the behavior you want to see. So if people aren't being kind, Be the first one to be kind. Something else you need to do is reach out. And I don't need to say it again, but you know when to do it. And reaching out doesn't just mean saying, hey, if anyone needs me, I'm around. Reaching out means learning to read the temperature of the room, the emotional temperature of the room. And as an empath, that's easy for me. But I know if you're not an empath, it's a little bit harder, and that's okay. It's something you can learn to do. Reaching out is noticing that someone's really struggling and going up to them and saying, hey, I got your back. What can I do to help you? And when they say nothing, you say, okay, well, I know you feel that way, but you've been on the story card for a really long time. How can I help you? Another way to do it, if you know that the person would really have their pride hurt, if it would hurt their ego to do something like that, is to say, hey, I would really like to learn what you're working on. Can we pair on this? I'd like to do some pair testing, or I'd like to do some pair coding on this with you, or let's get a mob involved and do some mob programming. Help that person out of the hole they're in from a place of kindness and a place of decency that doesn't involve calling them out and instead brings the whole community together to support them. This is extra important when it's not about the work. This is really, really important when you see that they're hurting and you don't know why, but you know that you can do something. It can be as simple as, man, you looked really down when you got in today. What's going on? It'll take a while for people to feel comfortable enough to share that kind of information, but once they do feel comfortable enough, your team will really start to change. Everyone will feel safer with each other, and you'll all of a sudden notice that people are sharing not just how their weekend was, but what's really happening in their lives. And people will get to a point of safety where meetings aren't challenging anymore. And all of a sudden, stand ups don't feel awkward. You feel like you're just getting together with a bunch of people that you feel really comfortable with to talk about what's really important. And the last thing, again, accountability. You are accountable to your team. They're accountable to you. You're all accountable to the business. Be accountable to being kind. Be accountable to being the change. And be accountable to reaching out. And I promise we're getting close to done. But the next thing I want to talk about is building healthy work dynamics. I've already talked about community building, and I've really pushed on why it's important. But really and truly, spend time learning about each other. Spend time building community with the people you work with. Your community will support you, and your community will help you do your job better. Another thing that will help build healthy work dynamics is advocating for work-life balance. No one is at their best when they're worn out. Everyone needs work-life balance. When you start to get to 50, 60-hour weeks, you are no longer at your best, and you really struggle to be a kind, happy person. This is extra important for people who have something to lose when they don't have work-life balance, or people who have something to lose by speaking out. I have the flexibility that I don't have children. I do have a lot of responsibilities outside of the office, but I'm not I'm not afraid to step out and say, "Hey, we've all put in 45 hours this week. I know I'm really tired, and I know we all have things to get to that outside of here. Mr. Project Manager, I think it would be great if we left at 5 on Friday instead of staying till 6 or 7. I know that we're not done with this task, but can we get back to it on Monday?" Being the advocate for work-life balance means that people who really have something to lose, people with children, people with parents that they help care for, they don't have to be afraid to step out and say, well, I have to go pick up my kid because somebody else is doing it, and saying, hey, we're all tired. We all need to get back to our job, back to our home lives and the other things that matter outside of the office. And again, be kind, even when you don't want to, even when it hurts, even when doing it sucks. Come to everything from a place of kindness. And again, accountability. You are accountable to one another. I'll stop harping on it, I promise. So I promised you this wouldn't take long. Some final thoughts. Disagreement is healthy. Conflict is okay as long as it's done from a place of fairness. We should disagree. And in fact, at Progressive, we have a motto, which is dare to disagree. The expectation is that the whole room's not always going to agree on the solution. We're going to talk about it. We shouldn't fight about it, but we should challenge each other. And again, be kind and be accountable in the way you disagree. So disagreement doesn't mean swearing at each other. It means being accountable. It means being kind. And then the last thought here is this idea of iron sharpening iron. And I talk about this a lot on Twitter. I talk about it in other talks I do. We should be recognizing one another as places of strength. And places of strength, iron and iron pushing up against each other, is what helps to sharpen and refine each other and help us be better versions of ourselves. I expect people to challenge me on my thoughts. I hope you'll challenge me on some of my thoughts on this talk, because I will be a better person and be better at what I'm doing by rising to that challenge and being able to defend my position. And it doesn't mean that I think that you're angry with me or that you hate me or that you don't think I'm a smart person because you challenged me. But it does mean that you've asked me to defend my position, and that's okay. And that's actually a really good thing. So I hope you guys enjoyed this short little journey through toxic teams and how to fix them and how to make them a little bit better. I didn't want to spend a lot of time talking about what makes a team toxic, and I didn't want to spend a lot of time with examples of toxicity because nobody wants to listen to that. I really just wanted to talk about solutions. So does anybody have any questions or thoughts they want to share with me or any of that kind of good stuff?
I imagine talking about examples of toxic teams are a real downer. Just ruin everyone's day. It's like that's really depressing. Oh my gosh, that's my life.
Anybody?
So we'll open it up for questions. So I can say I've worked on a variety of teams, and I remember one team I used to work on. We always went through. There was a lot of advocates for work-life balance, but there were always those times, those projects where everyone was kind of expected to be there 110%. So if that meant working a couple extra hours, coming in early, um, our team leaders were really good about understanding it, or not understanding. They saw the effort going into to get the project done, and then I don't know how many times my boss or my manager would come up to my office door after a sprint, and we got something delivered. He would say, you just take tomorrow off.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, take the day because you busted your butt. You got it done. We really appreciate it. Take some time for yourself. So compare that to some teams where you bust your butt, you bust your butt, you bust your butt, and the next day it's like, well, are you done? We have more work to do. Get back to work. And that can be really dehumanizing and and I think it's also, I have a seasonal problem. Like seasonal depression is a real
Mm-hmm.
thing. And I hate the fact of going into work when it's pitch dark or the sun's just starting to come up, and when I leave work, the sun's already gone down for the day, and just that absence of sunlight during that you're not exposed to during the day. That I can't do that every day. It's usually like, all right, I gotta work a 4-day week. I need to adjust my schedule, start working at 7, be done by 3. I gotta do something because it will kill me to start working and then it's pitch dark outside when I'm eventually done.
Yeah, it's really hard to not see sunlight, and not just
Yeah.
for people with seasonal affective disorder. Everyone needs to get that vitamin D occasionally, which
Yeah.
is really hard in Cleveland because it's always gray. Um, but it's really important. And if you're ever just feeling overtired or stressed at work, the best thing you can do is walk outside for 10 minutes.
Yes. I 100% agree. We have a question from Nicole. Nicole asks, any suggestions on how to get a coworker who approaches things from a place of anger, usually via body language, facial expression, or tone, when she disagrees with something to communicate better? No one is listening to her anymore, and her points are valid, and she is miserable.
That's hard. So the first thing I would recommend is there's this great book. It's really a management book, but there's a lot in there about communication and about feedback, called Radical Candor.
Hmm.
And it's written by a woman, and it has women in mind. So it's a lot about the way we communicate, because there are gender differences between the way women and men communicate, right? And there's differences in the way our communication is accepted by others. So I would definitely recommend she read that book. Um, oh, sorry, you gonna say something?
I'm looking it up on Amazon. Radical Candor: Be a Kick-Ass Boss Without Losing Your Humanity
Yes.
by
Um,
Kim Scott.
yes.
Yep.
And it's endorsed by some serious women. Like I think Sheryl Sandberg endorsed it, a number of other serious leaders. And like I said, it is a management book, but there's a lot about communication. Um, Also, there's this great book called Crucial Conversations. Um, that in it, I know it's kind of a cliche in the corporate world, but there's a lot in there about how to manage communication from a difficult place. Um,
What
Another
was that
thing,
called
she
again?
Crucial Conversations.
All right, I'm looking them all up when you say them.
um, I used to be, when I was at a previous job, I was really angry. And I was really angry because I was in a really tough situation. Um, and there were a lot of issues going on. That's where I first really learned about toxic teams, because I was in one.
Mm.
She will really help herself if she, one, starts to model new behavior. So she's probably got great ideas to share, but for a little while, she may want to sit back and just show that she can be a part of a team. And when something would come up that would usually make her angry, if she shows that she can kind of keep her cool in that situation and even keep quiet and then come back to it later from a place where she's taken a couple of breaths, thought about kindness, really thought about how would I want somebody to bring this to me, and then brought it up. Um, it's also really helpful to work in a mirror. Theater nerd here. Um, Spend time in front of a mirror. How do I look when I'm angry? And when she gets angry, go stand in front of the mirror in the bathroom and say, like, okay, what does my face look like? Okay, let me fix my face. And literally, I've had to do that because I read, like, everything I'm thinking reads on my face, and I'll have to go in the bathroom and say, okay, I got to fix myself for a minute so that I can come back out and not be a jerk. There's a lot more she can look to, but I think that's the best advice I have. Other than, and nobody throw tomatoes at me for this, but therapy helps. Usually, when you're that angry about things, there's other things that are driving that anger, and it might be that she needs to work through some of that.
I remember reading something somewhere where someone suggested like 80% of the population or a higher number
Mm.
really would benefit from some sort of therapy on a regular basis. Just too much being kept up, passive aggressive tweets, Facebook posts. I see that all the time.
Shout out to my therapist. I love her. She's my girl.
All right. And Nicole follows up. We're worried there's more at play than just work. Great point. Thank you for the suggestion. So thank you, Jenna.
You're welcome.
All righty. Anyone else? We'll go ahead and start wrapping it up. If you're watching this on the YouTube replay, feel free to leave a comment. And if I see a comment come through on this video, any video, I will go talk to Jenna and say, Jenna, you need to come over to YouTube and answer this question. So don't feel like you've lost your opportunity to interact with Jenna.
And feel free to tweet at me. I spend a lot of time on Twitter.
Absolutely. And so you're when you were presenting and you mentioned your Twitter name, your video was hiding it on the slide.
Oh,
So I put it in chat for everyone to who missed it. Um, all right. Well, I don't see any other chats coming through, so we'll go ahead and wrap it up here. Again, I'd like to thank Jenna so much for joining us today. And thank you to everyone who joined us live. And thank you to everyone who's watching this replay after the fact. We'll see you all again in a couple weeks for our next Swift Kick show. which I don't remember who it is. Oh, yes, I do. It's Aisha Blake, another
Oh,
Revolution Conf alumni.
I love
Um,
her.
so Jenna, come back in 2 weeks, and Aisha will be here. I'm not sure what she's speaking on. We're still getting information from her, but it's guaranteed to be good. Um, but with that, thank you, everyone, and we will see you next time.